Hey, hello, everyone. Welcome to today's webcast. I'm Melissa Stewart, and I'm here with Jessica Rohr, our Member Engagement and Communications Specialist, to talk about HathiTrust and just to give a little bit of an introductory session about what we do here at HathiTrust. So first, a little bit of housekeeping. We're going to ask that everyone, just like with all of our webcasts, that you all keep your cameras and your microphones off for the duration of the session. If you have any questions at all, please type them into the chat window at any time. And then at a couple of different places during the webcast, I'll read the questions aloud for them to be answered on the recording. And all right, with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jessica.
Great. Thank you, Melissa. So welcome everyone to this edition of the HathiTrust 101 series. We are spreading out this series of webinars in August and September to introduce members to some deeper dive topics. So you may have attended the ingest and contributing content session last week. Maybe you sat in yesterday on integrating catalog records. We've had a number of them, and there's still a few scheduled between now and September. So if you missed any, you can find those on our YouTube channel and also linked in our newsletter that's coming out next week, actually this week. So keep a watch out for that. So today we're going to be doing a much broader overview of HathiTrust. So today we're going to talk about the history of the organization, the governance structure, dive a bit more into the collections and the services that that collection allows, as well as some practical tips and tricks to making the most of your membership. So we'll talk a bit about content contribution as well as promoting HathiTrust. And we've left plenty of time for questions. So we hope that this is a bit of a primer to HathiTrust, and certainly look forward to hearing more from you about what else you want to hear about. So with that, I'm going to get started. Welcome to new members. We have welcomed 32 new libraries to HathiTrust in the past 2 years. So a few folks are here on the call, a few are attending next week's session, but the 24 members who have joined just since March are in bold here, and we anticipate or think that they joined specifically for the Emergency Temporary Access Service. But I think, as you will find out today, there are a lot more reasons to be part of the HathiTrust member community. But welcome everyone. The more the merrier. The more we have involved, the bigger and stronger our community is. So happy birthday, HathiTrust, in 2018. So this is a bit dated. The party hat is still so much fun, and who doesn't need a little bit of fun right now? So HathiTrust did celebrate 10 years in 2018, but our roots go back a bit further. So we mark the founding of HathiTrust in 2008 by the announcement from the CIC, the Committee on Institutional Cooperation, and now the Big Ten Academic Alliance, and the 12 institutions of the University of California system, when they announced they were forming HathiTrust. But the roots of the organization go back further. So we are looking at 2004, 2005, when Google announced a mass digitization effort. So they were working with 5 libraries, U of M, Stanford, Harvard, Oxford, the New York Public Library, all of whom are members of HathiTrust. But at that time, they were working specifically with those libraries to digitize their content. At various points, the librarians looked around and said, whoa, 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 wait a minute. This is not Google's library. This is the academic library community, and this belongs to us. And so they got together and really made a commitment to a long-term collective infrastructure to preserve the material long-term for the benefits of the scholarly community, not the corporate community. So that was the initial point of kind of the brainchild of HathiTrust. And they made this collective investment both in technical infrastructure, but also in the future. What could the collective collection at this scale really do for academic and research libraries? So 2008 onto 2018, but we started much earlier than that. a note here on Google. So while we would absolutely not exist had it not been for the mass digitization efforts in the early aughts, HathiTrust is not at all in a formal way affiliated with Google. So we continue to work with Google in terms of digitization streams. They do continue to digitize and work with many of you member libraries to do so. And we also work with them on sort of improving the quality of the content. That said, we are quite distinct. So even if you think about Google Books, our collection is built by academic libraries for academic libraries. And so the 17.4 million items in HathiTrust really are curated for the academic community. So Google Books, well, there's some overlap in content. They have also market copies, more trade, more commercial type items. So we do like to make a distinction there. Google is a for-profit enterprise and HathiTrust is a not-for-profit enterprise. So with that, I can say that our mission remains the same. Since 2008, we have been focused as a member-driven organization on preserving, collecting, communicating, sharing the whole record of human knowledge. So our work today reflects that mission day in and day out. So again, we work in the aims of scholarly interests, not corporate interests, and our members help drive that, as we will discuss further on. The mission has been the same. The vision is kind of a spin on the question, what can we do with all of this content? What can we do with this great membership organization that we have? Where do we want to go? So in 2017, 2018, we worked with the membership to really hone in on where we want to be. And this is where we landed. We want to be a catalyst. We want to be in the center of emerging forms of teaching, learning, research, to really drive that scholarly enterprise. And as many of you have probably heard me say, I read this now and I feel like we're in the middle of it. We sort of envisioned this as down the road, but as in many areas of our world right now, we have fast forwarded into a time when we're really seeing the benefits of the contributions and that collective vision that our founding members had back in 2008. So we'll hear more about how all of this plays out as we go on. So the organization itself, we're separate from the history. We have grown by many, many individuals, even since I joined 2 years ago. So this is our core team. We are a strong 12. It feels like a baker's dozen some days because we are taking on and really doing a lot of work to ensure that HathiTrust remains as strong as it is, both from a technical infrastructure and from a strategic organizational perspective. So we staff are kind of the eyes and the ears of HathiTrust. You'll hear a bit more about the other teams and other individuals who help make HathiTrust go. But when you think about HathiTrust, the core team is right here. We're focused on collections, on technical infrastructure, outreach and user services, copyright, collections, shared print. We've all got a role, and we do all wear many, many hats. I will say that there is a core team not represented in the portraits here, without whom we could not function, and that is our development and system administrators team at the University of Michigan Library. So they help operate and maintain the infrastructure and all the applications that really drive the digital library. So not in sight here, but certainly we couldn't do it without them. Other institutions without whom HathiTrust would not be here on a day-to-day basis. As mentioned, the University of Michigan is our administrative home. So they do a lot of our finance work, provide labor support, health and benefits, so they are where we reside and kind of hang our hat in an operational capacity. There's also a component of the technical infrastructure, so the repository itself. And then there are other organizations that we work with to also keep HathiTrust running and working as we expect it to. So the HathiTrust Research Center, for example, is kind of a joint endeavor from Indiana University and the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. So they operate and jointly maintain the research center. Indiana University houses our duplicate repository, so our backup technical infrastructure there. And then California Digital Library really is our metadata center. So some of you who are contributors may have worked with the Zephyr team, and they are the ones who manage the ingest and metadata workflows that keep everything running from a sort of back-end bibliographic perspective. So really from coast to coast, Berkeley to Baltimore, we're talking about 60 different people who in some way, shape, or form, some portion of an FTE, or just by their own good graces, really make sure that HathiTrust is running. Other teams, you'll hear more about them, but again, if you have at any point in the past few months emailed feedback@issues.hathitrust.org, you have run into a member librarian who has committed time and training and expertise to answer patron community questions. So they are not on our payroll, but oh my gosh, we couldn't do it without them. And more on our copyright review team reviewers in a minute too. So now that you've heard the nuts and bolts, our back end, all the sausage making and all the people who sort of run around and make things work, it really is though about our members. So we are a member-driven organization. We were formed by libraries, for libraries, to really advance the collective interests of academic and research libraries. So as mentioned, we have some teams that are composed exclusively of members. There are different areas, and we'll get into governance. We'll talk more about where members play out in the organization. But really at this point, I have to sort of highlight who all of you are sitting here. By the numbers, first off the bat, the members that we have here around the world, we are 100% funded by members. So we may serve all of these different campuses, that we are able to provide the 17.4 million items because our members contribute annual fees. And so that is exclusively how we are in existence on a regular basis. This year we have welcomed more members from Canada than any year, I think, since we've been founded. We've welcomed new members from Australia, England. So we continue to grow. Our membership is predominantly based in North America. But again, we do continue to expand our membership from different places all around the world. We represent a number of state systems, a handful of consortia, really just the one Claremont colleges, and then the different institutions that comprise the Big Ten Academic Alliance. So briefly, high level, how do all of these members come to find us and why do they join? We will go into much more depth later on in the presentation, but on a quick glance, the benefits of joining HathiTrust are diverse. People join for different reasons. One of the reasons why we were founded continues to be one of the main reasons why people join today. So preservation of digital objects, and certainly to commit access to those items is one of the main reasons. Members can contribute any number of items. There's no cap and there's no additional fee. So the preservation and access really is our core mission and continues to be. So the Emergency Temporary Access Service is built on the collection and built on the preservation of the items themselves. Accessing items, there are some specific member benefits. One is that they are able to download items in the public domain in full. So rather than downloading one page at a time, they are able to download a full title. 400 pages, that would get slow, one page at a time. So members are able to do that in one bulk download. The other access component that's specific to members is the accessible text request service. That is a service that permits access for users with print disabilities. I'll talk more about that. The shared print program brings with it a number of different benefits, guaranteed access to those titles, even if they are committed in shared print, and certainly preservation of those titles within the corpus and on your shelves. And then last is a really dedicated advanced computing space at the HathiTrust Research Center. So member researchers can apply for this special access. It's a dedicated computing environment that has a lot of power to do text and data mining work. So something that you'll hear me refer to, and Melissa as well, that I'd want to touch on here are member print holdings. So if you're a new member, you probably recently submitted these. If you are a returning member, the last time you may have submitted them is 2019, 2018. So we have been working to revise the workflow and kind of the process for print holdings. So we haven't done a call for them recently, but if you recall, they are something that we use in several different ways. First, they are a full portrait of your print holdings, monographs, serials, things that have been withdrawn or deaccessioned from your collection. And then we use those print holdings to both calculate annual fees, as well as provide access to certain services like the Emergency Temporary Access Service. So you'll hear us talk about print holdings here and there over the next few minutes. And I just wanted to refresh your memory about what exactly those are. So before I turn it over to Melissa, I want to take a pause, remind you that you are welcome to type questions at any time in the chat window, and we will make sure to answer those either in time or at the end of the session. So, Melissa.
Thanks, Jessica. I'm going to talk for a few minutes about HathiTrust governance and how our governance structure works. So HathiTrust is led by a board of governors. There are 12 members of the board of governors that are made up of member representatives from our member institutions. Now, our designated member representative is the voting representative for your institutions. And so for the most part, they are library directors, but not always. There are 12 members on the board. 6 of the members are appointed from our founding institutions. So there are 2 appointed members from the Big Ten, 2 from the University of California, 1 from the University of Michigan, and 1 from Indiana University. And then the other 6 members are voted from the membership. They serve 3-year terms unless they are appointed to the executive committee. So there are 4 members on the executive committee who serve 3 years, and they meet monthly. The rest of the full board meets quarterly. Also, the chair of the program steering committee and the executive director serve on the board in an ex officio capacity. Underneath the Board of Governors is the Program Steering Committee. So the Program Steering Committee is primarily made up of AUL level librarians who serve to direct our programs, and really they're a lot more in the weeds about what we do than the Board of Governors are. They supervise several committees and working groups, which are we do offer some opportunities that if you are not at an AUL level, you could serve. You can look on our website for a list of where those are. And we usually do a call for about once a year for new committees and working groups, as well as for program steering committee appointments. And so program steering committee is appointed by the Board of Governors. We take a call usually in May for new appointees for nominations, and then the Board of Governors chooses among those. And the Program Steering Committee, once or twice a year, they send out a call for committees and working groups, so we accept nominations for those, and then those are appointed by the Program Steering Committee. The executive director also reports to the Board of Governors, and under the executive director is the operations team, which are the 12 folks that Jessica showed in the slide previously. And then there are also a couple of working groups that report to the executive director, which Jessica will talk about in a few minutes. So basically, the roles and responsibilities of the membership, again, we're a member organization, as Jessica keeps stressing, so we really depend on our members to do more than just receive access. They need to participate. And so some of the ways that they do that, when we last year approved criteria for membership. We never had official criteria for membership, and now we do, and that was voted by the membership. Every year, the membership votes on the yearly budget. We elect 6 members of the Board of Governors, and also anytime our bylaws need to be revised, that needs to go to the vote of the membership. All right, next slide. And then here are a list of working groups. So right now we have a Statement of Values and Code of Conduct Task Force that reports directly to the Board of Governors. We do have a member of the board, and also our executive director also serve on that task force. And you'll find out more at our member meeting this fall about that Code of Conduct and Statement of Values. Also underneath the executive director, we have a user support team who they really, again, as Jessica said, they are who answers all of our questions and requests through that feedback email address. Anytime you need any kind of support, just email them and they will either help you answer your questions, or they will direct it to one of us if it needs to be escalated. So that is another way. There's going to be a call going out very soon for new members. If you're interested on working on user support, watch for that. Also, both of our programs, our federal documents program and our SharePrint programs, have advisory committees who help guide those programs. And then again, here are the program steering committee groups. We have a community metadata strategy task force, digital collection strategy working group, metadata sharing policy task force, and user engagement task force. And again, because some of these are task force, they have a time limited amount of time. A working group is kind of perpetual. And so we will have renewed members of the working groups, and then the task forces kind of will serve their purpose for a limited amount of time, go away, and then we'll have more task forces appointed after that. All right, now I'm going to switch gears a little bit and talk a little bit about our fee model. As Jessica mentioned earlier, we really, our operations do run completely on member fees. We have some grants occasionally for certain projects, but we don't depend on any grant funding for our operations. Those are all paid through our member fees. And our member fee model is designed in such a way to equitably share the cost of our operations throughout the membership. So we have kind of 2 elements to the fee. The first, we figure out how much it would cost to maintain all of the public domain materials in the collection, and then we divide that cost among the membership by dividing the membership into one of 3 tiers. So that, and the tier is based on the amount of total library expenditures as reported in public sources. And then all members of the same tier pay the same amount of that public domain fee. The second component of the fee is based on the overlap between the members' copyrighted holdings and the holdings in HathiTrust. So there is a kind of figure, and that member only pays for the overlap. And that amount varies widely across the membership as all members' collections vary in content and size. And so that's just a very quick overview about how that works. And again, if you have any questions, feel free to type them in the chat. All right, I'm going to turn it back over to Jessica.
Great. Thanks, Melissa. So as you can see, there are a lot of details, bits and pieces that come together and make up HathiTrust. But what you are probably most familiar with are some of the things that you yourselves have grown to depend upon or have been curious about. So as the title promises, HathiTrust is more than a digital library. So while most people and many individuals in the patron community know us for our 17.4 million digital items and accessing those in various ways, it's really the whole collection itself that drives a lot of the other services that really bring value, not just to individual libraries, but to our community as a whole. So digitization has created opportunities to really enhance collection management, again, not just in a single library, but at scale. It's enabled these kind of bigger questions of what can we learn from this corpus? So the data and text mining capacity that we have through the Research Center really lets us ask these bigger questions. We then also have this corpus of information to make even more accessible. So we focus a lot on different rights programs, copyright review programs, and really focusing on ways to make more of the corpus available in as many lawful ways as possible. So we continue to explore more ways that we can serve the needs of academic and research libraries, and you'll hear more about that as we go forth here. One particular service that I want to start with that I mentioned previously, the Accessible Text Request Service. So again, this is one of those ways in which HathiTrust has used copyright law and really looked towards how can we make more items accessible to more individuals. So the Accessible Text Request Service is a service that permits access to any item in the HathiTrust corpus to a user who has a print disability. So we as HathiTrust don't verify that eligibility. We work with either your library or an office for students with disabilities on your campus in order to identify those individuals and help them get access to titles in the collection. So if you have not already signed up for that service, you can do so at any time. It is something that we need to work with you to set up. So you can always email feedback at issues.hathitrust.org if you're not set up for that or if you're not sure. We will be doing a deep dive HathiTrust 101 webinar session on the Accessible Text Request Service in September. So keep your eye out for that if you want to hear more. Our shared print program is another program and service that is made available through the large collection that we all steward. So in having this huge collection, we're really able to look more broadly at how can we make preservation a continued focus for academic and research libraries. So our shared print program really is designed to match a print copy of a title with a digitized title in the HathiTrust digital collection. So in the past year, we have received commitments from more than half of our member libraries to retain titles for a period of 25 years. So this represents actually 76% of the monographs in the HathiTrust Digital Library have been committed for 25 years within our shared print program. So it's really a preservation effort, but also a cost sharing effort. Our program officer, Heather Welton, does some coordination work with other national and international shared print programs so that we can really start thinking of this as a collective endeavor, even more so than perhaps we do now. So we are continuing to build this program and really start thinking about creative ways that we can build services on top of it. So resource sharing is something that comes to mind as on the radar of the Shared Print Advisory Committee that is working on this effort now. So back to our roots, preservation and access. We believe that preservation without access is not really a library. So we remain committed to opening as many items in the corpus as possible for viewing, reading, research, wherever lawfully possible. We want to make sure that people can access that information. So a couple of things come to mind. The US FedDocs program is something that we've been working on steadily for several years. We have now 1.5 million items in that collection, everything from the Bureau of Indian Affairs to the EPA. are in this collection. We have it designated in the digital library itself, so you can explore that. And there's a lot of data on the site that really helps you understand what is in that collection. Heather Christensen is the program officer there, and we continue to try to fill in some of the gaps so that we can really have our hands around a digital and very available set of US FedDoc records. The copyright review program is something that we have been operating for many years. Christina Eden leads that charge, and we've been through many, many projects in this space. The copyright review program is focused on reviewing items in the digital library that may not have originally been opened for public domain, but which are eligible. And so the team of reviewers is comprised of member librarians who are, again, committing their time and committing to training so that they can review records and determine on an item-by-item basis whether they should be public domain or not. So one of the newer projects that we're working on is the Crown Copyright Project. We're working with titles from Canada, published in the UK, Australia, and looking to see which of those items could be, again, made available in public domain. So I think the focus right now has been a lot on Canadian government documents. So if you have no use or interest for the US FedDocs, stay tuned for the Canadian FedDocs. The HathiTrust Research Center is that pathway into the corpus. So if you've got big questions about connections between any of the 17.4 million items, the HathiTrust Research Center is a great place to start. So the text and data mining tools available through the HathiTrust Research Center can be very off-the-shelf, kind of open, plug and play type tools, just to get you familiar with some of the principles and some of the outputs of that kind of research. There are a number of different tools that are kind of mid-tier, mid-experience. And then also, as mentioned before, members have an opportunity to really do dedicated, kind of powerful computational research in what is called a data capsule environment. So member researchers can apply for this, and all of the HathiTrust Research Center tools are available to explore the entire HathiTrust corpus. So this is in copyright items as well as items in the public domain or open with Creative Commons licensing. So the whole corpus really is available to explore in text and data mining. One of our most recent services is the Emergency Temporary Access Service, as represented here by the mask. So we did have to retire the party hat. Man, would it be amazing to bring the party hat back so we can retire this mask. But we are definitely masking up here at HathiTrust, including our trusty elephant. So as most of you know, I think on the call, I had a chance to look and see who was attending, and I can say that I believe every single person here is familiar with the Emergency Temporary Access Service. So this is an extraordinary moment to really pay tribute to all of the contributors in the past 12 years, right? So we would not be here where we are today, able to offer temporary access titles to your academic community had it not been for these contributors over the years building the HathiTrust collection. So as you are aware, with the pandemic and with libraries having to close their stacks or their doors, we've been able to come up with a creative way that academic communities can still access those titles in copyright through the Emergency Temporary Access Service. So we are committed to offering this service as long as our libraries need it. We're currently doing an assessment process. I think many of you have completed that already, but we are remaining committed to offering this into the future. And it appears that we may need it. So all these services, as I've mentioned a million times, could not exist without the collection. So let's look at that a bit more closely. It all starts with human hands. The library at Pergama, this is 2nd century BCE in what is now modern day Turkey. But as you can imagine, these buildings and the shelves within the buildings were all put together by human hands. So from our earliest libraries to our digital libraries, we depend on the labor of human beings. So we have 3 billion plus page turns by thousands of scanning staff over the past dozen years and more. So beginning with mass digitization in the early aughts, we would not be here today if it were not for the painstaking effort of human beings. So I want to take a moment and recognize that even though we've got this fancy schmancy digital library, it really was through the human hands of turning those pages, and it continues to this day. So our collection, we like to say that we collect book and book-like objects, and that has been true from the beginning. That is something that our members have reiterated is important for us to remain focused on now. There are 17.4 million total volumes. That is about 39% of the collection is for US patrons, open in the public domain. It's about 4.4 million for those outside the US. Everything was contributed by our member libraries. I'll talk a bit more about contributors in a few minutes, but you can see just from this snapshot how much there is for us to work with and for us to continue to build upon going into the future. The majority of our collection comes from Google, so 95% or 94.5%, the collection is digitized from Google. We have another content stream coming from the Internet Archive, and then many local digitization efforts. Looking back to 2008, we had 2 contributors, the University of Michigan and Wisconsin, represented in the blue and the green. And since then, we've invited and have welcomed dozens of more contributors. So there are now more than 60 contributors. So most of the organization, though not all, are contributing, whether it's one item, 10, 12, thousands, tens of thousands. It doesn't really matter to us how many items you want to contribute. It's all about preservation and access. So it's not a requirement to contribute, but you can see here that people over the years have increasingly thought that it was a good idea to do so. Really high level snapshot of the collection. We continue to learn more about our collection, and as Melissa talked about, the Digital Collection Strategy Working Group is doing quite a bit of work to understand both what we have and what we do not have in the collection. But because our items have been digitized from academic and research libraries, the titles in HathiTrust reflect much of what you would find on your shelves. So being North American heavy, it's understandable that the Romance languages are well represented, with more than 50% of the collection in English. German, Italian, French, Spanish make up another large portion, but overall we have 455 languages represented in the collection. Also, not a surprise, we've got a great strength in the humanities. So literature, history, philosophy play very strongly in the HathiTrust collection. We also have some strengths in music scores. That's something that's of great interest to many. And then, less represented are areas that you might expect. So medical science, some of the harder sciences, that could change again as the Digital Collection Strategy Working Group sets a collection development strategy. We may find that those other areas in which we feel we are less represented may then in fact grow stronger. What we have been able to do, and what members and other patrons have been able to do with the collection, is break it down into some subsets. So I'd mentioned the US FedDocs collection. Again, 1.5 million items strong is one of the largest. And then we have some other specialized collections coming out of different organizations, different Creative Commons licensing efforts. The agricultural documents of Michigan State University, that came out of an effort last year from some of their librarians who got Creative Commons licensing from their local publications to put those together and have them in HathiTrust. One of our most recent collections is the Negro Universities Presses. That came out of a copyright review effort, and there's about 1,000 titles in that one. So there's big, small, kind of grassroots, more academic. There's a lot of different ways to slice and dice this collection, and you can explore that in the digital library under the Collections tab. So what would this huge collection be without being able to access it or discover the items in it? I'm going to talk a bit about that. So I want to state that this is pre-COVID, pre-ETAS, pre-emergency temporary access. So where here you see that copyrighted items are usually only available for search. That of course is different in the time of emergency temporary access. But in regular old times, good old fashioned times, back in January and February, a member and non-member alike would only be able to search items that are in copyright. So that's all the words in every title, front matter, body, index, everything. But that's true even for items that perhaps you have contributed. That is one of the sort of biggest misconceptions, is that if an individual contributes an item, can they then read it and have access to it? Not in usual times. However, in the days of COVID, in the days of ETAS, that is something that we are able to permit. So other access that's specific to members, again, the public domain access to download an item in full. So instead of having to download page by page by page, as a non-member might, a member patron is able to download that in full. So there's some advanced computational access, as I mentioned, through the HathiTrust Research Center, but primarily it is those two distinctions within the realm of copyright and public domain titles that remain the greatest sort of differentiators. So things that are in copyright also permit members to have special access for accessible text request service, and then again, the emergency temporary access. One thing I want to make sure that you know is that logging into HathiTrust really is the ticket to accessing the different member benefits and different in-catalog opportunities for downloading items in the public domain or accessing temporary access titles. So that login button in the upper right of the screen, that is the ticket. So pass that on to your patrons. That appears on every page in the catalog. Some institutions have set up automatic login, so it kind of just happens automatically as they find titles, discover them. But it is something that we recommend to your patrons that they log in. So then you can look more closely at full text and catalog search. Catalog search is much as you would expect. So like your own local catalog searching, it accepts Boolean logic. You can search on title, you can search on author. Many of those kind of basic searches also apply here in HathiTrust. There's different filters that are available too, so some advanced searching on publication dates or provenance. When you get into full text search, that's where the whole corpus is open. So open to you to find phrases, to find familiar words or words that you want to find together. That explores every word in the entire 17.4 million item collection. So there's different searches that you can do at an advanced level too, but that's kind of the difference between the catalog and the full text search. Moving on to making the most of HathiTrust. So once you've got all these services, you know how to access, you're talking about it with your patrons, you're thinking about how to do even more. So this is where we get into some of the more back-end ways that you can really use your membership and use some of the tools that we have available. So contributing content, if you haven't done so already and you're thinking about it, is you're joining a club, right? You're joining the group of HathiTrust members who are able to contribute titles. It's not a requirement, but if you are able to and you would like to contribute, you're definitely joining a group of people who've got some experience. So a lot of our members are contributing through Google. Several have a content stream working with Internet Archive, and then many members are working on their own local digitization projects. So contributing content is one way to be involved and to make the most of HathiTrust and to, kind of pay it forward, spread the wealth a little bit too. This is our collection built together, and so we can all benefit from increasing contributions. And how do we benefit? So why deposit? Why would you consider depositing content? So really it goes back to our core mission of preservation and access. So preserving the content for human record is certainly first and foremost in our mind, and then enabling access. And we enable access in many different ways. So we have the emergency temporary access service, as we've described, the accessible text request service. Also, if you contribute content, more people are able to access those titles. And then of course the research center tools, definitely, you can expand research as you have a larger corpus to research. So depositing really benefits not only your own library in terms of preservation, but the academic library community as a whole and the scholarly community as well. If you want to get really down and dirty, making the most of HathiTrust is all about getting your hands dirty. Bit of a do-it-yourself approach to taking some of the data feeds that we have available to think about metadata in different ways to integrate more into your local catalogs or discovery systems. So this is just a list of some of the data sets and APIs that we make available to members. You can go to the webpage here linked on this slide and explore a bit how to do that, what others have been doing with it, and kind of take it into your own hands what you might like to do with the data. Some of you may have been lucky enough to attend Graham Dethimer's presentation yesterday on integrating HathiTrust records into your catalog or discovery system. If not, you can see that link come through so you can view it on your own. And then you can also go to this documentation page that will help you figure out how to do this. This is something that many of our member libraries are doing to make items more discoverable in their local catalog for their patrons. We have a number of third-party vendors who are also integrating records, HathiTrust records into their system. So there's a number of different ways that you can make HathiTrust records more apparent for your patrons. Really, a big one. If you want to make the most of your membership, let your academic community know about HathiTrust. And there's a number of different ways that you can do this. So we've got a couple toolkits out there right now. The sort of general member toolkit has some introductory videos, a few tip sheets for reference librarians, faculty, staff, different ways to think about getting started with HathiTrust and integrating it into your own library instruction curriculum. The Emergency Temporary Access Service has its own kind of suite of materials and tools in case you want to do another push for that this coming semester. But we are trying to build up our kind of resource kit for all of these different ways of promoting HathiTrust on your campus. HathiTrust in the classroom is something that we're continuing to explore. We hear some things here and there. So if you know of a professor or anyone who is using HathiTrust in the classroom, I'm really interested in hearing about it, and I know others are too. So some ways that I've heard people are using HathiTrust in the classroom is to work on collection building together, either building a collection for the particular course or having a piece of the coursework actually be building a collection or a data set. The interface allows for downloading citations in APA or MLA format. There are, I know, some subject liaison librarians that I've talked to who use full text search to identify items for bibliographies. So they are able to help faculty members build a bibliography that they can use either in research or in their own courses. So something that is just, keep in mind that because the content that we have is digitized from academic and research libraries, the metadata that we have is nuanced in a way that is not in other digital libraries. So we have the benefit of, being built for a scholarly community, so things are more discoverable in that regard. Certainly, with everything that you have heard today and all of the nuances of the digital library and getting familiar with the corpus and finding things, you need to know how to get help. And you need to be able to tell your patrons how to get help. So pretty simply, the HathiTrust Digital Library, you can contact the user support team there at feedback@issues.hathitrust.org. And then the Research Center is available at htrc.help@hathitrust.org. So we want to get involved. You're doing it right now by attending the HathiTrust 101 series. You're getting involved. If you're a member representative, you're voting. If you're following us on Twitter, you're seeing us there. There's a lot of ways to get involved in HathiTrust, and we encourage you to do so. I mean, we are only as strong as our members, so we invite you to share what you know, share what you'd like to know, share what you would like HathiTrust to focus on. We're always listening. So with that, I'm going to say welcome to any new members. This is the community. We aren't wearing our party hats anymore. We are all wearing masks, and we look forward to a time when we can all be in the same room having some of these conversations. So I'm going to now turn it to Melissa to pop up a poll before we get into questions. Really just want to know, what else do you need to know?
Okay, that poll is out, and even while the poll's going, if anybody has any questions and you want to type those in the chat, go ahead and do that. I know that
Definitely.
we only have a few minutes left. And while the poll is going, does anybody have any questions for us? I know we just threw a lot of information at you.
Maybe we answered all your questions. Great. I see a strong showing coming in for the Research Center, HathiTrust in Teaching and Learning. Certainly, if you have other ideas for things that you need to know or want to know about HathiTrust, pop it in the chat. We'll definitely be keeping all of this in mind as we continue building out our webinar series.
We are recording most of these and putting them on our YouTube channel. And so if you go to our YouTube channel, I have playlists. There is a HathiTrust 101, where I'm putting all of these 101 series in that playlist. And there's also a playlist for our Mapping the Elephant series. So check those out for more information on what we're doing. And there also is a playlist for all of the webcasts that we've done related to the Emergency Temporary Access Service. But here's one: will we run the ETAS session again? I tried to sign up, but it was full.
Sure. I think so. We also have a recording of that on the YouTube channel. So if you want to view that, we have heard a few other people who would like to have a redux of that session. So it's likely we will schedule another one in the fall.
Yeah, they filled up very fast.
We do still have a couple minutes left for questions.
And also we have, if you have not participated in the poll, please take a look and tell us what you want to hear about. Okay, the still open and we will still answer questions, but I am going to stop the recording now. So I want to thank everybody for watching the recording, and then I'm going to turn it off, and please stay tuned for more webcasts.
Thank you.